Welcome to the Wellness for Women show, where we talk about life, weight loss and everything in between. I'm Faye Caseman, founder of the AAA Way Life and Weight Loss Programme, and I'm here to help you put together the pieces of life and weight loss for one last time. This is an episode of the Wellness for Women show, filmed live in the free Facebook group. Let's get started. So, rationally, we all know that making mistakes is a part of life, but it can be hard not to worry about messing up. It can be very tough to accept that making mistakes is part of life sometimes. It's all part of the learning process, especially if we're worried about what others might think, for example. And it's quite easy to go in on ourselves and tell ourselves that we are a failure or that we're just not good enough. But ultimately, that closes the door on our learning and it closes the door on growth and eventual success. So in today's show, I'm going to run you through particularly difficult day that I had last week, and I thought it might just be helpful for me to kind of go through how I processed that now, how I process that nowadays, now that I do the self-coaching. So if you want access to the show notes, leave me a hashtag show notes and I will send you those over when they're ready to go. So quick intro time for me, as usual. So I am Faye Caseman, creator of the AAA Way Weight Loss Programme. This programme helps you to change the way that you can lose your weight forever. As far as I'm concerned, you can say goodbye to counting points, counting calories, macros, shakes, etc. unless you really, really love it. Because, the whole point of my program is doing what you absolutely love and losing weight in the process. And you can say hello to food and life freedom. And it all takes just a few simple steps. So if you want to know more about my program, let me know. Just leave me a hashtag freedom and I will send you over the link to how you can get access to the free program and a quick introduction to the fundamentals that I use in my program. So, excuse me. In tonight's show, like I say, I want to have quite a vulnerable share with you about a challenging day that I had last week. That's if I don't choke to death in the meantime. Let me mute, hold on. Oh, you knew breathing was so challenging sometimes. I want to have quite a vulnerable share with you about a day that I had, and I basically feel like I just made mistake after mistake after mistake, and I want to sort of run through how I am processing them or how I processed them. So the day in question, picture this. It was Friday of the Platinum Jubilee weekend. So firstly, I wake up about 4:30. It had been 5:30 in the winter months, but obviously it's getting lighter. So I tend to find that I'm waking up about 4:30 nowadays. Pretty sure that's down to my hormones. Thank you, hormones. And here's mistake number one coming up, and the one that I seem to keep repeating lately. I try to go back to sleep. I look at the clock and my first thought is, it's too early. I shouldn't be awake right now. And so instead of embracing and accepting my awakeness, I fight it. I'm tossing and turning for half an hour, getting a little bit frustrated. Then I pick up my phone because, it's still too early to get up. And so then an hour passes and then I'm feeling quite sleepy. So I go back to sleep again. So I don't know if that sounds familiar. Any of you do this, or are you really good sleepers, or do you find that your sleep? I know certainly for some perimenopausal women like myself, maybe menopausal women, certainly I think these early wakes can be certainly something that is a delight for all of us. But yeah, so let me know if any of this sounds familiar, or whether you do this when you can't sleep. Again, hormones or no hormones, what do you do when you don't sleep? So that was kind of mistake number one. But what happens is then, you see, I have crazy dreams then. Somehow I managed to cram in a whole alternative life in the space of half an hour or an hour. And it always happens in those early hours when I try to go back to sleep. I then wake up disorientated, I feel fuzzy headed, and I feel less than stellar. Dreams, like I say, usually involve some kind of struggle or difficulty, and I find that they can leave a bit of a residue, the sort of when you kind of that you've slept, but yet you just kind of feel icky because it wasn't a great dream and it's kind of lasting with you, but yet you can't remember what it is. And so, you know, then I'm thinking, great, I've got a show to write. I've got a party to go to later because it's Jubilee weekend. This is not boding well. Coffee will cure it. So off I trot to get coffee. Now, coffee is great, but I have to say I give it far too much credit. It doesn't solve everything. If only it could solve everything, right? I then end up having an unexpected call with a friend, which was fine. Loved talking to her, and it was something that I was helping her with. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to help. Then I have an unexpected call from my mum and dad. They think they've got COVID. They didn't have COVID. They just didn't know how to read the test. They thought the C was COVID, not the T for test. But anyway, I agreed to get them milk. They finally figured that out a few days later. Still hadn't done the writing I wanted to do, so I needed to get ready. I needed to cook the food. I'm like, oh my god, there's no time. So, but I was determined to show up and, you know, do some work for the business. So I try and sit down and do some writing. So this is mistake number 2. I'm in no mood to write. I'm trying to do it just because I think that I should be doing it, and I need to do it, of all the thoughts that I've got going on. And it was just like wading through treacle, really, and wasn't very productive in the end. So I give up and I go and get ready. A shower will cure everything, you know. I didn't even stop to question what it was going to cure. It's going to cure it all. It's going to cure it. So I get dressed and I'm ready, and then it's like, crap. And here comes mistake number 3 again. I realize I've got 30 whole minutes to make the Mexican rice and the quiche that I wanted to make, and I've got to get ready for this street party. So I'm really rushing now, and I don't like being late, and I don't like being disorganized. Okay, so we'll make it. I managed to make all of this. Running down a little bit late, so we start to load the car. Mistake number 4. I'm still rushing. I dumped some shopping bags at the front of the door a few days before with the full intent of putting them back in the car, of course, because, you know, they just wait there. It's a bit like the stuff that you put at the top of, you know, bottom of your stairs to go up and the stuff at the top of the stairs to come down. Again, please tell me I'm not alone in that madness. I now actually have a basket at the top of my stairs for the stuff to come down. And so I'm carrying a picnic table and 2 chairs because, you know, I'm in a rush. And then I get my foot caught in one of the bags, step on the bag with the other foot, and I literally go flying out of my front door, landing on the table. I've got grazed palms, cut foot, and a hurt pride. I'm trying to hold back my tears. I'm hoping you're picturing all of this, keeping up with my little story here. You know, I'm trying to hold back my tears. I've done my makeup. I don't want to cry. And I'm feeling very sorry for myself now as I go and get a plaster for my foot and change my shoes, because I can't wear the same shoes because they hurt and they are now damaged. And I still don't slow down. I'm supposed to be going to this party. I still need to get the milk. And mistake number 5 is coming up. I think I can't let anybody down. I've got to do all of these things. So I managed to get to Morrison's and I managed to get to my mum in one piece. And now onto the party. But my hands and foot are throbbing, to say the least. So I'm finally at my friend's house. I feel like I've had the morning from hell. And breathe. It's going to be great. I'm going to have a party. So I'd been looking forward to this party. It was one of my best friend's parties. It was on her street, somebody that I've known since we were 16. And I said yes instantly because I wanted to spend time with her and her family. It sounded like fun. I've been very conscious lately that I feel like I spend a lot of time in the house locked away because I work from home. And then if I'm not working, I'm typically doing something towards the business. And I'd be lying if I said that I hadn't been a little bit nervous about going, didn't really know anyone. And so mistake number 6, didn't really recognize that I had those nerves. I'd really just kind of been not really thinking about that and just brushing it away. So we arrived, it's all going well. We're sitting, we're chatting. And then there's a shift that kind of happens. People start to mingle. And I suddenly feel a bit lost. All of a sudden, I didn't know who to speak to or how. I started to feel really overwhelmed, got a ton of thoughts rushing through, and none of them were nice, about how I was standing around like a wallflower and I didn't know what to say and I'm not as confident as I thought. And what if I tell people that I'm a weight loss coach and they judge me for not being a supermodel? And I was worrying about my daughter's happiness in that moment as the only lone teen at the party. You know, how could I help her to feel comfortable? And I just started to feel really pathetic. My back was hurting, my foot was hurting, probably was in a bit of shock, as one of my other good friends pointed out to me. but again, the brain was in the toilet. So thank you for that, brain. And at that point, I'd been completely and utterly taken over by my inner saboteurs. The judge, the jury, and the executioners were all out. And so I made my excuses, had a brief cry on my friend, cue worrying that I dampened her day, and cried my way home. So I then got home. I'm very open and honest with my daughter. I find that really helps with our relationship. And so I was very clear with her that obviously I was quite upset. She was very amazing. She's very good and very empathetic. And I trot off to journal, continuing to blub like a baby. So there I sat, continuing to process, occasional tears, aching from head to toe from my fall. Aching from head to toe, from my fall. But yeah, I mean, feeling inspired to share. And so this is the gift for me out of that whole day, is the fact that I feel ready to share and to talk about this. And this is why I find this quite fascinating. So you see, I was never somebody who thought that it was okay to show your feelings or to be vulnerable. Ask me anything, I will tell you, and I will be open and honest about it, but you had to ask me first. I thought that I had to be capable. I have to be responsible. I had to be tough. I had to show no weakness. Just going to check. I'm still live in there. Yes, I am. It's all right. My phone did something weird, so I've lost all chat function. Should anybody ask me any questions? But yeah, so I had to be capable, responsible, tough, and show no weakness. And it started really early on for me. I don't really know why, but I think I must have been about maybe like 7, 8, or 9, something like that kind of age, I think it was. And you might not believe this, but I actually taught myself not to be ticklish. I hated being tickled. I hated feeling powerless. And so I literally blocked the physical feelings down. And for years, proudly declared to anybody that I'm not ticklish, like this really sort of proud moment. I've taught myself not to be ticklish. I don't like crying, because even though I know that I feel so much better after I cried. And so for years I held back tears because I didn't want to show weakness. Watching a horror movie, I don't want to seem weak. So I would hold back acting. I would have hated to have looked scared, basically, watching a horror movie. If I was, again, in my younger years, not so bothered now, but still, it's still within me, if you know what I mean. And so whatever it is, I don't know whether it was, like, say, name calling as a kid, general low self-esteem. I don't really know fully. I'm still exploring it. But what it does mean is that I've got a tendency to bottle up my feelings, and I don't always recognize that I'm doing it. So mistake number 7, not realizing that I had been bottling up my thoughts and feelings, or as I've likened it before, like holding a balloon underwater. I'd been boldly carrying on, and I think I'd probably been bottling some feelings up for a few days, not really paying as much attention to my needs. So again, I'm holding down this balloon. And then mistake 8, and the final mistake for the day, believing cheesecake would make me feel better. Yep, you guessed it. I had an emotional overeat in the evening. I had been looking forward to that cheesecake because cheesecake is my favourite thing. But I delivered a larger portion that I needed. And it happens. It doesn't matter where you are in your weight loss journey. Emotional eating will happen. But there are ways with, like, the program that I teach, where we can make those fewer and further between, basically. I'm still classing that as a win, because again, the whole point is to try and celebrate even in adversity. And I'm celebrating it as a win because past me could have quite easily eaten a whole cheesecake. So, like one of those, like that kind of size, or at least half of it. But actually, I just had a quarter of it. But I still physically, I didn't need it. So technically, it was an overeat. Okay, hopefully you're keeping up with me. I know I talk fast, and that is quite a story to keep up with. And hopefully you're kind of picturing my day, really, as it was kind of panning out, just kind of rolling from one thing to another there, and not really processing it through. So what are my learning points from this? What am I here to tell you about in terms of how I process that? So my learning points really from this is that, like I said, I've been looking a lot lately with regards to my saboteurs. I'm doing a course on it. And so some of my personal top saboteurs are everybody has a judge. So your base saboteur is a judge. Everybody will judge themselves. We will always be our worst critics. But I also carry my next highest is hyper rationalizing. So I am super duper rational and trying to figure it all out, hyper achieving, and then I'm an avoider. So this is work in progress for me, but having that awareness that those are my traits are really, really helpful. And so, like I say, I'm better than I was with all of these things, but the takeaways from the day is that I still have work to do. And do you know what, though? That's okay. Again, old me would have wallowed after a day like this. I probably would have got quite depressed. I would have gone into victim saboteur mode. I would have hidden away until I'd kind of blocked it all out, basically, and then carried on until the next time I had some kind of day. And again, just continually holding that balloon down. And so this is the one thing that I've really learned from my weight loss journey, and the process that I use is that it really is okay to be okay. It's okay to have vulnerabilities. It's okay to have things that you need to work on, and you really don't need to be perfect. And the next thing that I've learned is about the power of acceptance. So there is so much relief from suffering when you accept that you are where you are and you don't try and fight reality. So when I was processing that, what was done was done. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't change it. All I could do was decide how I wanted to move forward. And I wanted to make sure that I was moving forward in a way that was going to serve me, without judging myself. Well, obviously there was that. I started with judgment, if you see what I mean, but I worked my way out of it. Rather than sitting there basically just dwelling on it all day and rehashing it in my brain. And I do that with the superpower of curiosity, because I can still do a curious and kind assessment of my day, just like I can do with the weight loss. And so it's about trying to look at what happened as neutrally as possible and going over it and getting curious and then deciding whether you can step into action, how to hold yourself accountable to those things. So my takeaway gifts from each of it. So I now have some more awareness that I can now use to decide what I'm going to do in future occurrences. I for want of better words, potentially learn a lesson from this experience. So again, it's a real gift, and this is what you can get from working on weight loss with this kind of methodology. And so now, like I say, I've got the power to choose what I do and how I go forward. So what have I learned from each of them? So mistake one, going back to sleep when I woke up at 4:30. So I recognize that I need to work on my thoughts around this waking up early. I can't change when my body decides to wake up. I can't change how it's going to feel at 4:30 in the morning, in the sense of that if I'm awake, I'm awake, but obviously what I can change is the thoughts in and around that. So when I have thoughts like it's too early, I can't get up, there's an element of judgment to that. Who says it's too early? Who said that 4:30 is too early? There's some kind of social norm that you've got used to over the years, whether that's because I'm a 9-to-5 worker. So again, your body and your brain sort of works in those hourly clocks. But there's lots of people that get up at 4:30. They're absolutely happy. Some people might even set their alarm for 4:30. So there is no right or wrong in that. But my brain is in judgment mode, saying that it's wrong. I shouldn't be up at this time. And I also can have thoughts like it's too cold, it's too dark. And again, I'm judging the coldness and the darkness, but these are solvable things. And so, but the thing with this is that it's the potential catalyst for the whole of my day. And so actually it's something that I feel I personally need to prioritize. So how can I do that? So my plan of action for this is I need to decide how do I want to think and feel at 4:30 in the morning. You have to try and decide in advance. So, if I want to be able to embrace the early morning start, because actually I do quite like early mornings. Once I've got over that initial thought of, it's too early, I shouldn't be up. And if I actually then do wake up and get on with my day, I actually am absolutely fine. It's actually not as big a deal as my brain makes out. So, I could work on going to bed at a suitable time so that I still feel well rested if I want to have more sleep cycles, but you can do this intuitively too. You don't necessarily need to get too heavy into looking at sleep cycles like me. I could remind myself that going back to sleep often makes me feel worse. rather than, and therefore try and encourage myself to wake up and get on with the day. I can remind myself of the gifts of the morning. So I'm typically more creative in the morning. So I tend to find that it's easier for me to write first thing in the morning, at like 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. I've been able to bang out quite a lot of content. I like the peacefulness of the mornings. It's all still, it's all quiet. I like listening to the birds singing, and I like watching the sunrise. So these are all good things that can counteract the thoughts if I want them to, or I can just decide that's how life is and just roll over, grunt, and go back to sleep. The choice is mine ultimately. So what did I do about mistake number 2? So mistake number 2 was trying to write when I was in a mood. Now, if you're a business owner like me, you'll know that it takes work. And I feel very compelled to show up because I feel very passionately about what I do. That said, sometimes it leads to me putting more pressure on myself than I really need to. I advocate, obviously, listening to your mind, body, and soul. That's part of my program. But I also forget to do it sometimes too. Again, we do. We're all human at the end of the day. But this is the great thing about awareness, though, because once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. So, and sometimes, with things that are a bit more ingrained, you do need to see it a few more times before the domino falls. But if you don't ever go looking for the dominoes, nothing will change, basically. And ultimately, there's an element of acceptance that I need to do, because it's okay to not be in the mood to do something. Where sometimes I can be quite hard on myself, that I should be doing these things. But ultimately, I have a choice. Do it, don't do it. Work on my mood, don't work on my mood. These are all my choices. And this is how you can step into and be really empowered by this kind of process. Because instead of just sitting in victimhood over it, feeling sorry for myself that I didn't do the writing and I'm bad, that I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I have a choice as to how I show up and on how I view that. And it works the same with food as well. If you've had an overeat, I have the power to decide how we think about those things. And that's where the process really comes into its own. Okay. Mistake number 3, not having a plan. So the day's events just reinforce the fact that I work better if I have a realistic plan. And this is why realistic planning is one of my daily steps in, that I encourage everybody to take when they go through my program. I was ultimately trying to do too much. I'd heightened the expectation on myself. I've been talking a lot about expectation the past few weeks. And I literally had set myself up for a fall. Had I made a plan, a realistic plan, even if I didn't stick to it 100%, because it's not about perfection, it's just about giving yourself a guide so that it increases your chance of success. But effectively what I'd done is I'd made a huge wish list for myself. And I didn't have any pivot points mapped out for surprises like unexpected calls. And therefore, it led to mistake number 4, which was rushing. So mistake number 4 and rushing. So again, this just simply reminds me that I need to slow down. I could have brought in, what I could have done is that I could have brought in some mindfulness techniques. I could have journaled. I could have self-coached more before, during, or after any of these events to try and change the course of the day as it was panning out. But I didn't, because I was rushing. I put my blinkers on effectively. And I say, sort of mindfulness, journaling, self-coaching, these kind of things, they're not things that you just do once, or sometimes even once a day, to see the benefit of them. They don't have to take very long. They literally can be little teeny tiny mindful moments, I call them. But sometimes when I'm rushing and I'm busy, that's another trigger word for me, is the word busy. Because when I get busy, all seemingly sensible thoughts go out the window. And this is something that, again, I've developed awareness of myself over, and what the actual implications of that are. Because we all know it, but unless you actually sit down and sometimes actually give it some proper thought, you can't change it. Mistake number 5. We are getting there, ladies. There's a bit of a longer one. So mistake number 5, thinking I can let people down. So this is an interesting one to reflect on. Well, of course you can let people down. The point is, though, that I'm not really in control of it. I have limited ability to impact how someone actually thinks and feels. All I can ever do is ever try to be the best person that I can be in any given moment, and they will either accept that or not accept that. The irony of it is that in rushing to make sure that I was on time for others, I was effectively putting myself last, but then I created the accident, which then put me further back behind and then leads on to the further mistakes. So, you know, again, the thoughts of I can't let somebody down actually has this knock-on effect. And so again, it's catching these thoughts when you do them and actually saying, you know, what's true and not true, and is it helpful, is it kind? And the reality is nobody would have cared if I was running a bit late. It's not like me to be late. You know, my true friends and families would accept me for who I am anyway. And so the only person that was judging me at this point in time is me. So again, I'd gone down the rabbit hole. And then we've got mistake number 6. So not recognizing my concerns about socializing. So like I said, a bit of a funny one, talking to a friend just before I hopped on this call. And just saying perhaps I was in a bit of a shock, and yes, that could come into it, but I have got a bit of history, as I was talking about in the 5 Ds of eating out episode that I did. I have suffered with depression in the past. I have struggled in social situations in the past, not gone to parties, not felt comfortable at parties, etc. And I won't go into it too much here because of time, but I just hadn't given it any thought. And again, you can do some pre-work before going into these events about, again, how you want to show up and just checking in with yourself, really. That's, again, it's just what it's all about, checking in with yourself. But it had been a while since I'd been invited to a party. So, you know, I was just excited, and it didn't matter how nice that bunch of people were. I still hadn't really factored in the fact that I'm not used to socializing in parties still. You know, I haven't really gone out much from COVID. I have had this past and of not being so confident. So yeah, you know, but again, in the moment, I was just like, oh, you know, so pathetic. I've gone home crying from a party. But at the end of the day, you know I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person who's gone home not feeling confident from a party, or gone to a party not feeling confident. You know, I feel very confident in front of a computer, on a telephone, but face to face somehow is something that I perhaps still need to work on. You know, but that again, it's okay. You know, I now have a choice. I can decide, am I a party person or not a party person? Maybe I'm somebody who doesn't do well in larger groups of people that I don't know in that kind of situation. I'm perhaps better, but I think I'd be fine if I went to a networking event, for example, or I was doing a coaching event, because I'm there for a purpose. It's that small talk thing, I think, that leaves me a bit uncomfortable sometimes. But I have a choice, you know, going forward. I have a choice. Do I say yes or no the next time I get invited to one of these things, or do I want to work on being more comfortable in these kind of scenarios, you know? But what I don't have to do is sit there thinking, woe is me, I can never go to a party, I'm antisocial, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other, which could be very easy to do. And like I say, that's where I started. I had to work myself out of that with some journaling and some self-coaching. But again, celebrate the wins. Kudos to me. I went to the party. It didn't quite go as I hoped, but I still went, and I did go, and I did still see my friends. So, you know, that was still good. Bottling feelings, number 7. So yeah, deep one for me. Like I say, this is a habit I've had for a long time. It's one that I've worked on accepting is part of me. And it's really important to accept the parts of you that you are not so comfortable about, because they are still a part of you. You can't hide them. You know, I'd not been feeling great during the week, probably hormone related. I tried to put in extra self-care, extra mindfulness, that kind of thing, but I clearly hadn't worked it through enough for myself, and I was feeling it in my body. And so my plan going forward is that I just more and more, I will hopefully start to recognize that. And the people that I talk to on a regular basis, if they see that in me, you know, I can prime them and say, hey, look, if you notice this about me going on, remind me that this is something that I do. If you notice that I'm bottling, then, you know, let me know. And then eating the cheesecake, number 8, emotionally eating cheesecake. I mean, if you're going to emotionally eat something, you know, cheesecake, that definitely would be one of mine. But yeah, you know, it happens. I'm not infallible to an overeat. But I see it for what it is now. So again, in my old dieting days, I would have, well, I would have, like I say, I would have gone knee deep in that cheesecake. The whole lot would have gone, for starters. But I see that for what it is now. It's an overeat. I just accept that it happened. I can't turn back the clock on it, but I can decide how to move forward. So I had a choice. What do I do with the rest of it? Do I stick it in the bin? Do I portion it out so that I'm not tempted by larger portions? Do I freeze some of it? I had those choices, and there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's about making a decision with it, making sure that you're happy with it, because you choose it. That's the difference between my program and a diet. It's about getting rid of the shoulds and the musts and deciding what it is that you want. What is it you want? When do you want it? When do we want it now? That kind of thing. Because that's when you feel less restricted and more empowered through your weight loss. Okay, right, I am done. So like I say, I hope that that has been helpful to you, just to see kind of how that happens and that it's possible to survive, these what can be bad days, and there's ways to kind of process through those. Because again, all of this will show up from a weight loss perspective. This could have showed up for days for me in my eating had I not done that kind of work nowadays. Because again, that's what would have happened. I would have gone into effort mode for the whole weekend and just eating my face off because I'd been miserable. And so again, life, weight loss, puzzle go together. So yeah, I hope that helps. Like I say, it's okay to struggle with making mistakes, and even after a really howling day, just know that you can move forward. I know it's not really that wasn't a typical day, thank goodness, because like I say, I was particularly drained after it, but I thought that it was a good example to be able to just kind of show you how I would process each of those types of things. And obviously if it was just one of those things, let alone 8, and I probably could have found more things to process, really, but how that's all possible by embracing this type of methodology, basically. So today, I'm now, or the day after, really, I was able to breathe easier, a lot more easier than I was. And like I say, for me, the importance is of trying to learn from your mistakes and growing from them. So, like I say, let me know anything that resonated, anything that you thought was particularly helpful. Leave a hashtag gem. Tell me what it is that you liked about this live. Give it a thumbs up. Keep watching every week. Pop over to my website if you want to get notified when I'm going live. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, if you want to boost your life and weight loss the AAA way, check out the relevant links for today's show in the description. Speak soon.